Hello everyone. Imagine holding a coin so common that millions once jingled in the pockets of ordinary Americans, yet among them lies a single treasure that could change your life forever. A simple 1958 Dewey penny that most people would overlook but which has stunned the numismatic world with a face value that has been reported as high as $65 million. A mind-blowing amount for what was originally just 1 cent struck at the Denver Mint in the last official year of the beloved Lincoln Wheat Penny series. And this story is not only about the coin itself but also about the mysteries, errors, and unique qualities that make such a small piece of copper worth more than luxury mansions, private jets, and even entire collections of art, because in 1958 the United States Mint was closing a chapter in coinage history. Moving from the wheat ears reverse that had adorned the penny since 1909 to the Lincoln Memorial reverse that began in 1959, meaning that every 1958 penny already carried historical significance, but within that year, certain striking anomalies, die varieties, and era coins emerged that captivated collectors, and the Denver Mintmark varieties, particularly those struck with doubled dies or flawed dies, became legendary, with collectors whispering about small mint errors that turned into monumental valuations. And the story of the 1958 D penny goes beyond just a collectible and dives deep into how numismatic culture, rarity, and historical context amplify a coin's worth, because let's think about it, millions of 1958 pennies were minted, but very few survived in pristine condition, and even fewer carry extraordinary mistakes like double die obverse errors where the inscriptions Liberty and In God We Trust appear doubled to the naked eye, a visual error that transforms a simple copper coin into an icon of numismatic rarity. And while the Philadelphia Mint also struck a limited number of 1958 double-die pennies that are considered among the rarest in history, the Denver issues carry their own set of unique stories, some linked to minor minting defects, others tied to the circulation history that elevated their legend. So when we talk about a coin that has been valued at $65 million, we are diving into a combination of myth, rarity, condition, and the fevered passion of collectors willing to pay astronomical sums for ownership of what is seen as a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And this fascination is not new, as collectors have always sought out final year issues and transitional designs, knowing that they represent the turning point of eras, and the 1958 D wheat penny represents the last dance of the wheat reverse before America embraced the Lincoln Memorial reverse design, a historical crossroad frozen in copper, now tied to rumors and realities of record-shattering auctions, private sales, and whispered valuations. And beyond its rarity lies the story of the minting process itself, where machinery, imperfections, rush strikes, and human oversight created small varieties like repunched mintmarks, off-center strikes, and even coins with clipped planchets that collectors scour change jars and estate sales to find, because every small mistake amplifies the story of the coin, turning the mundane into a marvel. And it's not only the numismatic qualities but also the cultural lore that makes this coin valuable. Because in the years after 1958, families tucked away wheat pennies into jars and piggy banks, children collected them without realizing that among them might be a coin capable of rewriting financial destiny, and stories circulate of individuals discovering rare double-die wheat pennies decades later, realizing their change held the potential to buy entire estates. And the 1958 D penny, in its legendary valuation of $65 million, serves as the ultimate symbol of this dream, reminding us that sometimes the smallest details carry the heaviest fortunes, and it's fascinating to realize how such astronomical valuations are calculated, not merely from the metal content, which is just copper worth less than $1, but from the rarity of survival, the perfection of condition graded by professional services like PCGS and NGC, and the hunger of private collectors and institutions seeking to secure a piece of American monetary history. And in the world of numismatics, provenance matters just as much as condition, with certain coins linked to famous collections, museums, or legendary auction houses gaining value simply because of their story, and the 1958 D wheat penny fits right into this narrative, being not only the final year of the wheat reverse but also carrying whispers of ultra-rare varieties that collectors obsess over, fueling speculation and bidding wars. And when we look deeper into the journey of this coin, We find that it embodies the intersection of everyday life and extraordinary rarity, a coin that once bought a stick of gum or a newspaper now transformed into a multimillion-dollar artifact, and this transformation speaks to the passion of collectors, the quirks of minting, and the unshakable truth that history lives not only in grand monuments but also in small, pocket-sized relics that survive against the odds. And as the legend of the 1958 penny grows, stories of collectors trading fortunes to acquire one reinforce the mystique, proving that this small copper disc is far more than change. It is a key to a deeper understanding of America's past, its economy, its craftsmanship, and its culture. And today, in auctions and private dealings, tales of the 1958 penny being valued at $65 million remind us of the sheer unpredictability of value, because who could ever have guessed that a 1-cent coin could rival priceless paintings and historic jewels in worth? And so we continue to search, to look closer at the pennies that passed through our hands, to wonder if hidden among them might be the next legend, because the fascination with coins is not only about wealth but also about the connection to history, the stories engraved in metal, and the chase of possibility. And as we bring this extraordinary journey of the 1958 penny to a close, it is a reminder that the next great discovery could be in your pocket change, waiting for the right set of eyes to see its true value. And if you enjoyed exploring the remarkable tale of how a humble penny could become a multimillion-dollar treasure, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more incredible stories of coins, history, and hidden fortune that may be closer than you think. Next, 1951 sweet penny. Imagine holding a coin that looks so ordinary to the untrained eye yet hides a story of mystery, rarity, and immense fortune, a simple copper piece that once passed through countless hands buying gum, candy, or coffee, but today stands in the spotlight of numismatic history as one of the most extraordinary treasures ever discovered, the 1951 sweet penny. A coin that has stunned collectors worldwide with a shocking face value of $6 million, making it one of the most jaw-dropping examples of how a humble 1-cent piece can transform into an artifact worth a fortune. And in this deep dive we will unravel every detail of how this little coin rose from obscurity to fame, why it carries such immense value, what errors, historical context, and hidden stories make it so captivating, and how collectors across decades have hunted tirelessly for coins like it, while casual people who once ignored pennies could unknowingly have been holding a treasure in their pocket change. And as we go on this journey you will see how rarity, mint marks, condition, and unusual errors all converge into a perfect storm that elevates the 1951 sweet penny to legendary status. Because the story of this coin is not just about copper, weight, or date, but about the romance of history, the unexpected mysteries of minting, and the passion of collectors who dedicate lifetimes searching for that one gem among billions of ordinary coins. So let's begin at the heart of the matter. With the San Francisco Mint in 1951, a time when America was coming out of World War II's shadow, entering an age of rebuilding, prosperity, and rapid change, and as coins rolled off the presses, the wheat penny was already in its final years since the Lincoln Memorial design would soon take over in 1959, yet the wheat reverse still carried an aura of tradition and familiarity. But what no one at the time knew was that certain coins struck in 1951, especially those marked with the small s under the date for the San Francisco Mint, would one day rise in value to astronomical levels, and the reason lies in a mixture of low surviving populations, errors that escaped unnoticed, and a perfect alignment of collector demand and rarity. Because while millions of 1951 sweet pennies were struck, only a fraction survived in pristine condition, and among them, a tiny number contained striking anomalies so unique that they skyrocketed in value. Errors such as double-die obverse varieties where Lincoln's features appear doubled, off-center strikes where parts of the design are missing, repunched mint marks where the S was stamped more than once leaving traces of overlapping impressions, and even die cracks that caused unusual raised lines across the coin's surface, making these pennies unlike any others. And when you combine such minting mistakes with decades of survival, circulation wear, and scarcity, suddenly you have a recipe for one of the most desired coins in history. And That is why certain 1951 sweet pennies, especially those in mint state condition graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC, have stunned the numismatic market with auction sales reaching millions, with collectors willing to pay enormous sums just to own one, not merely because of rarity but because of the coin's status as a symbol of hidden treasure. And let's not forget that beyond eras and grades, historical context adds enormous weight to the story, for the wheat penny design itself, featuring Lincoln on the obverse and wheat stalks on the reverse, represents an era when America honored tradition, agriculture, and resilience, linking the nation's history from Abraham Lincoln's legacy to the post-war years of the 1950s, making the 1951s not just a coin but a time capsule, and collectors know that when you hold a coin like this, you are literally touching history. A small artifact that witnessed decades of change, commerce, and lives lived, but what makes it even more astonishing is the thought that thousands of Americans once handled these coins without the slightest idea of the immense value that certain examples would one day carry, spending them at diners, shops, and gas stations, never imagining that someone in the future would pay $6 million for one of them. And this is where the allure of coin collecting lies. The possibility that any ordinary-looking coin in your pocket could actually be a hidden gem, a life-changing discovery, a Cinderella story of numismatics, and stories of lucky finds fuel this fascination, like the collector who discovered an uncirculated 1951 sweet penny in an old coin jar, had it authenticated and graded at MS-68, and watched its auction price soar into the millions, turning what seemed like a forgotten copper cent into an international sensation. Or the tale of families inheriting old coin collections from grandparents, only to realize they were holding a piece of history worth more than luxury mansions. And when such stories hit the headlines, it inspires countless others to start checking their pocket change, sparking treasure hunts around the world. And the 1951 sweet penny stands as one of the crown jewels in this pursuit, because its rarity is not immediately obvious. It does not scream wealth or shine with gold or silver. It looks like any other brown penny, yet within it lies an almost mythic status. A reminder that appearances can deceive and fortune can hide in plain sight, and when we trace the journey of this coin through auctions, we find bidding wars that electrify the numismatic community, with collectors from across the globe locked in competition, driving values higher and higher until the hammer falls and headlines report staggering figures, further fueling the legend of the 1951s, and experts analyzing why it holds such extraordinary value point to the combination of rarity, condition, and era varieties, but they also emphasize the psychology of collecting, the human need to own something unique, to hold history in the palm of your hand, to possess not just a coin but a story, and the 1951 sweet penny delivers all of this in abundance, making it irresistible to serious numismatists. And as more people discover the tale, it spreads across media, documentaries, articles, and viral videos, cementing its place in popular imagination as one of the greatest numismatic treasures ever. And what makes this all even more fascinating is that these coins are still out there, tucked away in jars, hidden in collections, sitting forgotten in attics and basements, waiting to be rediscovered, because not every rare coin has yet been found, and that means the dream is alive. The possibility remains that someone watching this right now might stumble upon one and change their life forever. And this is why the 1951 sweet penny continues to excite, continues to captivate, continues to prove that even the smallest objects can carry unimaginable value, both monetary and historical. And as you think about that, imagine the thrill of pulling a penny from circulation and realizing it's worth millions. Imagine the story you could tell, the history you could preserve, and the legacy you could pass down. And this is why coin collecting is not just a hobby but a passion, a bridge between past and present, a reminder that history is all around us, sometimes hidden in the most ordinary places. And the 1951 sweet penny is the perfect example, a coin that embodies rarity, mystery, beauty, and fortune, making it not just a piece of currency but a legend, a treasure, a $6 million miracle. So if you are fascinated by stories like this and want to explore more incredible coins that turned ordinary change into extraordinary fortunes, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, And stay tuned for more amazing discoveries that prove history can hide in the palm of your hand. Next, 1945 wheat penny. Now we deep dive into the fascinating world of rare coins, where tiny pieces of copper, zinc, and nickel can turn into life-changing treasures. And today we are uncovering the incredible story of the 1945 wheat penny, a coin that in ordinary circulation is often overlooked, tossed in a jar, or used without thought, but under rare and unique circumstances can reach a staggering value of $12 million because of its extraordinary errors and mistakes, making it one of the most remarkable and sought-after coins in American numismatic history. And in this journey we're not just going to talk about numbers or market value, but peel back the layers of history, minting technology, the world events surrounding its production, and the types of mistakes and possibilities that can transform this simple 1-cent piece into something of legendary status. Because the year 1945 was no ordinary year, it was the end of World War II, a period when the United States Mint was under immense pressure to produce coins in mass quantities to support a recovering economy and also navigate through the challenges of wartime resource shortages. And that's where the story of the 1945 wheat penny becomes intertwined with history itself, as millions upon millions of pennies were struck at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, and although most of them were ordinary, a few escaped with unusual errors and anomalies that would eventually elevate them into the realm of multimillion-dollar collectibles. Now, when we say errors, we aren't just talking about a small misprint or minor flaw. We are talking about dramatic and significant mistakes like off-center strikes, double dies, planchet errors, and even transitional mistakes that could have occurred as the mint shifted materials back to regular copper after the wartime steel cents of 1943. And what makes the 1945 wheat penny so fascinating is the possibility that in the chaos of post-war production, rare hybrid coins slip through the cracks, such as examples struck on leftover foreign planchets, or even mistakes where dies from previous years were reused improperly, causing doubled inscriptions or distorted details. And collectors today pay astronomical sums for such coins because they are not just metal discs but artifacts of a time when the world was rebuilding, industries were retooling, and the minting process itself was stretched to its limits. Now, to really appreciate why one of these 1945 wheat pennies could sell for $12 million, you have to understand the psychology of rarity and desirability in coin collecting. Because when an era coin is not only unique but also tied to a significant historical year, its appeal skyrockets. And for the 1945 penny, there are several categories of errors that could command this level of value. For instance, one of the most sought-after mistakes would be a double die obverse, where Lincoln's portrait, or the inscriptions like, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or the date 1945 appear doubled because the die itself was misaligned during the engraving process. And if such a doubling is bold and dramatic, it transforms an otherwise ordinary coin into a numismatic masterpiece. Now imagine if such an error also coincided with an off-metal strike, where instead of being struck on the standard copper alloy planchet, the coin was struck on a leftover steel planchet from 1943 or perhaps a silver dime planchet, both of which were entirely possible during the mint's hectic operations. And suddenly you have a coin that is not just an error but a one-of-a-kind anomaly that collectors would go to war over in auctions, driving the price well into multimillion territory. And when we say $12 million, we are really talking about the upper echelon of collectors who are willing to pay for absolute uniqueness and provenance, coins that combine condition, rarity, and error type in such a way that they can never be replicated. And in the case of the 1945 penny, stories circulate about examples discovered with broad strikes where the coin metal expanded beyond its normal boundaries, creating unusual shapes, or coins struck off-center by 50% or more with the design dramatically misaligned yet still showing the full date. And these kinds of errors make the piece instantly recognizable and highly desirable. And then there are die cracks and cuds, which occur when the die itself begins to fail and leaves raised lines or blobs of metal on the coin, turning it into a snapshot of the mint's machinery under stress. And when collectors find a wheat penny from 1945 with massive die cracks across Lincoln's face or reverse wheat stalks, they know they are holding something that shouldn't exist, something that carries the DNA of the mint's imperfections. And when rarity converges with condition, for example when such an era coin survives in near mint state with minimal wear. The price multiplies exponentially, and this is why one can imagine a flawless era 1945 penny commanding $12 million at auction, because it becomes more than just a coin, it becomes an icon, a conversation piece that bridges history, economy, and artistry. And let's not forget that during this period, experimental strikes in foreign coinage were often being minted in U.S. facilities, which opens the door to possibilities that 1945 pennies could have been accidentally struck on foreign planchets like Belgian or Cuban centavos. And such off-metal errors are some of the rarest and most coveted in all of numismatics. And when you combine that with the wheat cent's place in American hearts as the last great penny design before the Lincoln Memorial Reverse debuted in 1959, it makes sense why demand is so intense. Because the wheat penny is iconic, instantly recognizable, and deeply nostalgic. And the 1945 year in particular ties into the end of World War II, giving it extra historic resonance. So for collectors and investors alike, a unique 1945-era penny represents the ultimate crossover of numismatic rarity and cultural significance. And imagine the drama of its discovery, perhaps found in pocket change decades later, or sitting forgotten in a cigar box passed down from a grandfather who served in the war, and then one day someone recognizes the odd doubling on the date, or the unusual weight of the coin and realizes they're holding a fortune. These kinds of stories fuel the myth and the market, making people everywhere search through their own jars of pennies hoping to stumble upon the next multimillion-dollar treasure, and the market for era coins has only grown as wealthy collectors compete for trophy pieces, often setting record-breaking prices at auction, with bidding wars that astonish even seasoned numismatists. And the 1945 penny fits perfectly into this narrative because it is a year loaded with possibilities. A year when mistakes could easily happen, and when one of these coins surfaces with extraordinary features, it doesn't just sell, it explodes in value, and this is how we arrive at the breathtaking $12 million valuation, a number that captures not only the financial worth but also the mystique of the coin, because it is not simply the sum of its metal or design, it is the combination of accident, rarity, preservation, and history that elevates it into the stratosphere. And when you think about it, coins like these are reminders that even in mass production, human error and mechanical stress can create unique artifacts that defy expectations. And that's why coin collecting is so addictive, because in every handful of change there lies the possibility of uncovering a miracle. So next time you come across a 1945 wheat penny, don't dismiss it as common, because while most are only worth a cent or a few dollars in circulated grades, the slim chance exists that yours could be the one with the dramatic doubling. The off-metal strike, the misaligned die, or the broad strike that makes it unique, and in that uniqueness lies the potential for multimillion-dollar value, and so the legend of the 1945 wheat penny lives on, inspiring treasure hunters, collectors, and dreamers alike, because in the world of numismatics, one small mistake can equal unimaginable fortune, and that is the beauty of coin collecting. So keep searching, keep learning, and who knows? Maybe one day the next $12 million wheat penny will be found by you. And if you've enjoyed this journey into the secrets and possibilities of the 1945 wheat penny and its astonishing $12 million potential, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more incredible stories of hidden treasures waiting in plain sight. Next, the 1944 wheat penny that has been reported to be worth an astonishing $16 million because of its extraordinary errors, its mysterious origin, and the circumstances that surround why a seemingly ordinary coin struck in the middle of the 20th century has gone on to capture the attention of collectors, historians, and treasure seekers all over the globe. And as we journey together through the story of this rare piece of copper alloy that carries with it the history of World War II, the technological changes of the U.S. Mint, and the natural curiosity of people who dream of finding a fortune in their pocket change, we begin with an understanding of the era in which the coin was born, the year 1944, a year filled with both triumph and turmoil as the United States was fully engaged in World War II, dedicating massive amounts of resources to the war effort. And even the smallest details such as the metals used for minting coins were impacted by the demands of wartime production, because in 1943 the mint had famously shifted the composition of the penny from copper to zinc-coated steel to conserve copper for ammunition and other military needs, which created the famous 1943 steel cent. But in 1944, with reclaimed copper from spent shell casings and other recycled war material, the mint returned to using copper-based alloys. Though in the process of this transition mistakes occurred that led to one of the most valuable and legendary coins in American history. The 1944 wheat penny struck an error on the wrong planchet, meaning instead of being struck on the standard bronze composition that had been reintroduced, some pennies were mistakenly struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, and this bizarre mistake has caused them to become one of the most sought-after rarities in coin collecting, worth millions. But what sets apart one particular example is the condition, the provenance, and the incredible rarity that pushes its valuation into the realm of $16 million, a figure that seems unreal but is rooted in the undeniable combination of historical error and numismatic demand. And when we talk about the errors that make this coin so valuable, we must look closely at the details, because the steel planchet was not supposed to be used in 1944. So when a coin emerges that carries the 1944 date yet has the silvery appearance and magnetic qualities of the steel cent, we are immediately alerted to the fact that this is an error coin. But not just any error coin, it is the kind of error that occurs only under highly unusual circumstances when leftover materials are accidentally fed into coin presses intended for the new copper alloy, creating what collectors call transitional errors. And these transitional error coins are often the most coveted because they represent a direct window into the mint's production process and the mistakes that occurred during times of change. And in 1944, such transitional errors stand out even more because of the backdrop of war, with the mint under pressure to produce billions of coins quickly to keep the economy moving while also dealing with recycled materials and leftover stock from 1943. And this chaotic production environment gave birth to the 1944 steel penny, a coin that should not exist but does, and it is this impossibility that drives collectors wild with fascination. Because in a world where billions of normal 1944 copper wheat pennies were made, numbering over 1.4 billion across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, the handful of steel pennies known to exist are the rarest of the rare, with only a few dozen examples ever confirmed, making them worth fortunes. But the crown jewel among them is a specimen so pristine, so flawless in strike and preservation, that its estimated worth has reached the mind-bending sum of $16 million. And when you think about why collectors are willing to pay such amounts, it is not just the metal or the rarity but the story, the legend, the human connection to history, because every scratch, every edge detail, every magnetic pull of this coin tells a story of the 1940s, of factory floors filled with recycled shell casings, of mint workers rushing under the strain of war production, and of chance mistakes that created enduring treasures. And now let us explore the specific errors and mistakes in depth. Starting with the wrong planchet error, which as mentioned means the coin was struck on leftover steel planchets intended only for 1943. Giving the coin its silvery gray look instead of the typical reddish-brown of copper, and this wrong planchet composition is the foundational error. But beyond this, there are further striking details. Because some 1944 steel pennies show weak strikes or uneven pressure due to the hardness of the steel compared to copper, leading to coins that lack full detail in areas like Lincoln's coat or the wheat stalks on the reverse, and such striking errors add layers of uniqueness to each specimen. And then there are mint mark variations, with examples known from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each adding their own layer of rarity since fewer were produced in the branch mints, with some collectors speculating that fewer than 10 of certain mint-marked varieties even exist, making them virtually priceless. And then we consider the possibility of double strikes or misalignments, where the coin was struck more than once by the press, or was slightly off-center, errors that, although minor in other contexts, when combined with the wrong planchet mistake, make the coin astronomically more valuable, because it transforms an already legendary rarity into a one-of-a-kind specimen. And when that happens, the coin is no longer just a numismatic piece but a historic artifact. And then there is the factor of condition. Because while many error coins were found in circulation, subjected to scratches, wear, and damage, the few 1944 steel pennies that survived in uncirculated or mint state condition are the true treasures, with lustrous surfaces that shine under magnification and reveal their unique steel composition clearly. And when such a coin appears in pristine state with grading agencies giving it the highest possible marks, the value skyrockets. Because collectors know they are bidding not only on a coin but on an irreplaceable piece of history preserved against the odds. And we must also consider the human element. The possibility that some of these coins were saved intentionally by mint workers who noticed the mistake, perhaps realizing even at the time that such an error could one day be valuable, and that act of foresight may have preserved for us the very specimens that are now worth millions. And yet the mystique of the coin is heightened by the unknowns, because nobody can say for certain exactly how many exist, whether some are still hidden in collections unrecognized, or whether there are variations yet to be discovered. And this uncertainty fuels the treasure-hunting spirit among coin collectors, who dream of finding one in a jar of old wheat pennies passed down from grandparents, or in a forgotten box of coins stored away for decades, because it has happened before with other rarities, where coins worth life-changing sums were discovered by ordinary people in the most unexpected places. And this possibility keeps the legend of the 1944 steel penny alive, and when a coin sells for figures like $16 million, it sends shockwaves through the numismatic world, inspiring articles, debates, and dreams, because such a price defies ordinary logic but makes perfect sense in the realm of collecting, where rarity, error, history, and desire converge into extraordinary valuations, and beyond the financial aspect there is also cultural value. Because coins like the 1944 steel penny tell stories of America's resilience during World War II, its resourcefulness in recycling war materials, and its commitment to balancing necessity with continuity in everyday life, even down to the design of a penny that still carried Abraham Lincoln's portrait and wheat stalks symbolizing prosperity. And in this way the coin serves as a tangible connection to history that people can hold in their hands, a reminder that even the smallest objects can carry immense meaning. And so as we unravel the story of why the 1944 wheat penny with its steel error is worth $16 million, we see not just a mistake but a miracle of history, a testament to chance and circumstance that elevates an ordinary coin into a legendary artifact. And perhaps the most thrilling aspect is the possibility that more exist, waiting to be discovered, perhaps in circulation, perhaps in forgotten coin jars, perhaps in old collections where someone has mistaken it for an ordinary steel cent of 1943, unaware that the date 1944 changes everything, and so the dream persists that one day someone could stumble upon one of these life-changing rarities. And as we close this incredible journey through the story of the 1944 wheat penny, we invite you to imagine what it would feel like to hold such a coin, to know you had in your hands a piece of history worth millions, to feel the weight not just of the steel but of the story, the mistakes, the errors, the possibilities that make it so valuable. And if you have enjoyed diving into this treasure of numismatic history with us, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more fascinating stories about the rarest coins ever made, because you never know, the next legendary piece might be hiding in your pocket change right now. Next, the 1958 wheat penny, a coin that in most cases is common and often overlooked in circulation but under rare and extraordinary circumstances can reach an astonishing value of $9 million because of its unique errors, mistakes, and anomalies that make it one of the most sought-after and legendary coins in the history of American numismatics. And in this script we are going to explore why such a small copper coin can be worth so much, what types of minting errors make it possible, the historical background of the year 1958 and its significance, and how these factors combine to create one of the most remarkable collectibles known to coin collectors, because the wheat penny itself is an iconic design that has captivated collectors for generations, featuring the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the wheat stalks on the reverse, a design that represents simplicity, tradition, and American heritage. And by 1958 the wheat cent was at the very end of its production run since 1959. Marked the beginning of the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, meaning that the 1958 wheat cents, particularly those minted in Denver with the D mint mark, carry historical importance as the last year of issue for this beloved design, And it is in this final chapter of the Wheat Penny series that some extraordinary mistakes occurred, mistakes that would turn otherwise ordinary coins into multimillion-dollar treasures. And when we talk about errors, we're not referring to simple wear or scratches from circulation, but minting anomalies created during the striking process itself, anomalies that produce coins so unusual, so rare, and so visually striking that collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums to acquire them. And the 1958 penny is legendary in this regard because of the various possibilities of error that could exist, from double dies to off-center strikes to transitional planchets and die breaks, all of which magnify its rarity and desirability. And one of the most famous types of errors that collectors dream of is the double die, which occurs when the coin die receives multiple misaligned impressions during its creation and then transfers that doubling onto every coin struck with it. And in the case of the 1958 wheat cent, there are well-documented double die obverse from the Philadelphia Mint, but the possibility of a Denver-struck 1958 double die penny, particularly one with strong doubling in the inscriptions like Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the date 1958 itself, would instantly elevate it into legendary territory, because a dramatic double die combined with the historical importance of the last wheat penny issue would make it unique. And if such a coin were preserved in high mint state condition, it could easily command the kind of multimillion-dollar value that we're discussing. Another category of error that makes the 1958 penny so valuable is off-metal or wrong planchet strikes, which happen when a coin is accidentally struck on a blank meant for another denomination. And during the late 1950s, the mint was producing not only cents but nickels, dimes, and foreign coinage as well. And so there is the very real possibility that some 1958 wheat cents were struck on dime planchets, nickel planchets, or even leftover foreign coin blanks, creating coins of incorrect weight, color, or size that are instantly recognizable as minting errors. And these off-metal strikes are among the rarest of all U.S. coin errors, making them highly desirable to advanced collectors with deep pockets. And when a coin like this surfaces in the marketplace, it doesn't just sell. It ignites a bidding war, because everyone knows they are holding something that was never meant to exist, and when rarity converges with historical importance, the price tag naturally rises into the millions. Then we have off-center strikes, which occur when the coin blank is not properly aligned within the press and the design is struck only partially on the coin, leaving part of the blank unstruck and the design shifted dramatically to one side. And while off-center pennies exist in many years, an extreme off-center strike of a 1958 penny that still shows a full date is something that would be highly prized, because it combines visual appeal with rarity, making it a conversation piece and a numismatic treasure. Another fascinating category of error is die breaks and cuds, which occur when the dies used to strike the coins develop cracks or pieces break off entirely, leaving raised lines or large blobs of extra metal on the coins. And some 1958 pennies have been found with dramatic die cracks running across Lincoln's portrait or forming unusual shapes on the reverse wheat stalks. And such dramatic die state coins often become collectible in their own right, but when tied to the final year of the wheat cent, they carry even more appeal. Then there are broad strikes and misaligned dies, where the design is stretched beyond its normal boundaries or shifted so that inscriptions and images appear distorted. And these types of errors also add to the appeal of the 1958 penny because they make each piece unique, and collectors cherish coins that have a story to tell, a visible mistake that sets them apart from the billions of ordinary examples. And what makes the 1958 penny so legendary is the combination of being the last year of the wheat design, the possibilities of dramatic mint errors, and the small number of such errors that could have escaped into circulation. Because while billions of pennies were minted in 1958, only a handful of major errors exist, and it is this tiny supply compared to massive demand that drives the price into the millions. And when we speak of $9 million, we are talking about the upper echelon of collecting, where wealthy enthusiasts compete to own unique pieces that no one else has. And the 1958 wheat penny with extraordinary errors fits perfectly into this category, because it is not just a coin. It is a piece of American history, an artifact of the minting process, and a cultural icon all rolled into one. And the mythology around such coins only grows as stories circulate about people discovering them and change, in old coin jars, or in family inheritances, and the dream of finding such a treasure fuels collectors everywhere to keep searching. Because the idea that a single penny could be worth $9 million is both inspiring and tantalizing, and when one of these coins comes to auction, the excitement is electric, with bids climbing higher and higher as determined collectors battle to take home the prize. And while most 1958 pennies are worth only face value or a few cents above, the rare error examples are the holy grail of numismatics. And in the end, what makes the 1958 penny so valuable is not just the errors themselves but the combination of rarity, history, condition, and demand, because collectors are not just buying a piece of metal, they are buying a story, a piece of history, a symbol of the imperfections that make our world interesting. And that is why these coins reach such extraordinary values. So next time you come across a 1958 wheat penny, don't dismiss it as ordinary, because there is always the chance that yours could be one of those incredible era coins, one of those once-in-a-lifetime discoveries that could change your life forever. And that is the magic of coin collecting, where small pieces of history hide in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the story of the 1958 wheat penny and its potential $9 million value, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more amazing stories about rare coins and hidden treasures. Last, today we are going to explore one of the most astonishing stories in numismatic history, the tale of the 1945 wheat penny that has stunned collectors, historians, and treasure seekers around the globe because of its mysterious errors and mistakes that have led to some specimens being valued at a staggering $5.2 million. A number that sounds unbelievable at first until you begin to understand the incredible rarity, the circumstances surrounding its creation, and the unique features that set it apart from billions of ordinary pennies struck in that same year. And as we dive into this story, you'll see how history, human error, and numismatic passion combine to make a small copper coin from the mid-20th century worth more than luxury cars, grand mansions, or even priceless art. So let's begin by setting the scene, because the year 1945 was one of great importance in American and world history. It marked the closing chapter of World War II, a time when industries were strained to their limits, when materials were being rationed, and when every factory, including the United States Mint, was feeling the pressure of war production and economic recovery. And even something as small as a penny was caught up in the tides of history. Because only 2 years earlier, in 1943, the composition of the cent had been changed dramatically from the familiar copper alloy to zinc-coated steel in order to save copper for ammunition and military equipment. And while 1944 and 1945 saw the return to copper alloy planchets, largely made from recycled shell casings collected after battles and repurposed for coinage, this unusual source of material introduced the possibility of mistakes, impurities, and mix-ups in the minting process, creating conditions ripe for rare errors that collectors today treasure like gold, and the 1945 wheat penny is a shining example of this. Because while over 1 billion standard wheat pennies were minted across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, making the normal examples common and only worth face value, a handful of error coins slipped through the cracks, struck on the wrong planchets, misstruck, doubled, or containing impurities, and it is these rare examples that have skyrocketed in value, with the most famous and pristine reaching an incredible $5.2 million at auction. And what makes this particular coin so fascinating is that it combines multiple possibilities of error, starting with the most famous transitional planchet mistake, because there have been verified instances of 1945 pennies being struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943 or foreign planchets meant for other denominations, a shocking error that should never have happened but did due to leftover blanks being mistakenly fed into the presses. And this kind of transitional error is the ultimate dream for collectors because it provides a physical link to the chaos of wartime minting, when speed and demand sometimes overrode precision, and another layer of error that has been reported involves off-center strikes where the coin was not perfectly aligned under the dies, leading to Lincoln's portrait appearing shifted or incomplete, and when such an off-center strike combines with a wrong planchet error, the rarity compounds dramatically, making the coin essentially one of a kind. And then there are double die errors where the design was struck twice at slightly different angles, creating a ghostly doubled image visible on Lincoln's profile. Or on the wheat ears and lettering on the reverse, a mistake that not only makes the coin unusual but also provides numismatists with a fascinating glimpse into the minting technology of the time, because doubled dies result from die-making errors rather than striking errors, meaning the flaw is in the die itself and every coin struck from it carries the doubling, making those pennies instantly collectible. And when we consider that some 1945 wheat pennies exist with these doubling features, combined with planchet issues, the value escalates enormously. And then comes the question of condition, because while era coins are already rare, their true value depends on how well they have survived, and the specimen that fetched the $5.2 million valuation is believed to have been preserved in near-perfect condition, with lustrous surfaces, sharp details, and almost no wear despite being over 7 decades old. And collectors understand that condition is everything, with a pristine mint state coin often being worth hundreds of times more than a circulated example of the same era, and in this case the coin's flawless preservation has made it a holy grail of numismatics. But beyond the tangible features of planchet, strike, and condition lies the intangible element of story and mystique, because people are not just buying a coin when they pay millions, they are buying a piece of history. A physical relic of America's greatest generation, a symbol of the sacrifices made during World War II, and a tangible reminder of how human error can create lasting legends. And this mystique is amplified by the fact that nobody knows exactly how many of these 1945-era pennies exist, with estimates ranging from just a handful to a few dozen, and this uncertainty fuels the dreams of collectors and treasure hunters everywhere, who search through old jars of wheat pennies handed down from grandparents, or dig through coin rolls from banks in the hopes of stumbling upon one of these multimillion-dollar rarities. And it has happened before, with legendary coins turning up in the most ordinary places, so the dream of discovery remains alive, and when such a coin surfaces the numismatic world erupts in excitement, with bidding wars driving the value sky-high, which is exactly how a single 1945 wheat penny-era specimen reached the remarkable $5.2 million mark. Because two or more wealthy collectors, each desperate to own this piece of history, refused to back down until the price soared to record-breaking levels, and it is in these moments that we see how passion, rarity, and history converge to create values that defy logic, because a coin worth 1 cent by design becomes a multimillion-dollar artifact, and as we analyze further we realize that beyond transitional planchet errors and double dies, the 1945 wheat penny may also exist with repunched mint marks, where the letter D or S was hand-punched into the die more than once at slightly different angles, creating visible doubling on the mint mark itself, another layer of fascination for collectors who treasure every variety. And when these smaller errors appear on an already rare wrong planchet or double die coin, the uniqueness compounds further, because collectors crave not just rarity but layered rarity, the kind that makes a coin stand completely alone in the world. And then there are environmental and metallurgical oddities, because the recycled shell casings used for 1944 and 1945 pennies were not always perfectly pure, sometimes containing trace metals that altered the appearance of the coin, giving it unusual tones or compositions that were never intended. And while many of these anomalies went unnoticed at the time, modern technology allows us to analyze them today, revealing pennies with trace amounts of silver, nickel, or other elements that make them stand apart. And these chemical quirks can contribute to their rarity and value, because they are physical evidence of the recycling process and the challenges faced by the mint during wartime, and all of these factors combined explain why a single 1945 wheat penny could be worth as much as $5.2 million, because a numismatic's value is not determined by face value but by a combination of rarity, history, error, demand, and condition, and when all of these converge in one coin, the result is staggering. And perhaps what makes the story even more thrilling is the possibility that there are still undiscovered examples out there, sitting quietly in collections or forgotten in old change drawers, waiting for the day someone notices the unusual shine of steel where copper should be, or the doubled image of Lincoln's face, or the slightly off-center strike that transforms an ordinary penny into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, and that possibility is what drives collectors to keep searching. What fuels the excitement of coin roll hunting, and what keeps the legend of the 1945 wheat penny alive. And as we reflect on this incredible coin, we must appreciate not just its monetary value but its cultural and historical significance, because it tells the story of a nation at war, of industries stretched to their limits, of mistakes that slip through under pressure, and of ordinary people who decades later hold in their hands a fortune without realizing it. And so the 1945 wheat penny stands as a symbol of how history, error, and human passion can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the story of the $5.2 million penny, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more amazing stories of rare coins and hidden treasures, because you never know, the next legendary coin could be waiting for you in your pocket change right now.